Welcome, Reanimated fans, to this week's episode. I'm H.A. Conrad, coming to you from Brooklyn, here, as always, with my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin, fresh from getting flu shots. How are you doing today?
A little sore. But yes, great, thank you.
Do you get any of the after effects? I feel generally crappy for like 3 days after I get the shots, but then I'm fine.
Pretty mild. I think it just a little bit of aching in the old shoulder area. But yeah, otherwise okay.
Yeah, well, good for you. Now we're all flu shotted up, so that's good. In COVID news here, cases are going up in New York, specifically in certain communities, i.e. the Orthodox Jewish communities, because they don't...
Oh, not again.
Yep, they don't believe that the masks work, so none of them are wearing them. And we have, for the first time in a long time, gone over 1,000 cases. And there have been many deaths, or several deaths more so than we had been seeing. And it's all limited to those communities. It's pretty rough, and everybody's concerned that this may spread again and cause another loop. So I don't know what's going to happen. We will see. And then in terms of other things happening, the mayor basically just gave all the restaurants extensions so that the outdoor dining thing that they've been doing in order to basically try to save their businesses is now a year-round thing, and they can basically serve outside. That said, if they set up sort of like tents with heaters and stuff, the same rules apply for the amount of, you can only have like 25% occupancy. So I don't know how much that helps them. And then the indoor dining thing with 25% occupancy starts, I think, next week. But again, I don't know how many people are actually going to partake of that. So let's hope that they can squash the curve that has been happening, but it's a little bit scary. I saw that they reported actually over the weekend, I think 3 or 4 deaths in Brooklyn. Not my area of Brooklyn, a different neighborhood, but still, it's a little concerning. And
our death count has gone, like as far as our daily, it was up around 1,000, not last week, and now it's back under 1,000 a day.
Death count or
yeah, death count.
Yeah, so anyway...
We're still getting 45,000 or so cases every 24 hours.
Well, and there's been a lot of talk in the news, I mean, because there's definitely been very strong voices that are, because some health officials have gone into those communities to try to, like, help, and there's been pushback from the Orthodox community saying that they're basically being forced into ghettos, which is a tough, message. I think there's some concern that maybe this is actually the sort of forerunner of a new curve of cases, which I'm really a second wave, which it's just terrifying to think about, because I don't want to say things have felt like normal, because they definitely haven't, but there's slightly more freedom right now where you can like walk around and do stuff in a way that you kind of couldn't before. So are we ready to talk about some zombie stuff? We've got some news items before we talk about the episodes 5 and 6 of Lovecraft Country, Strange Case, and Meet Me in Daegu, but there's actually a few news items, but we'll probably zoom through those pretty quickly. I just wanted to point out that Forbes has gone back to some of their zombie reporting, and it made me kind of happy to see.
Because they've gotten sneak peeks of things like the finale that's airing in a week.
Yeah.
And yeah, so they're getting back on their
I deliberately
horse.
I didn't put the finale in there because I just didn't want to spoil that for us. Though I did see that they had reviewed that. But one of the things that they were reviewing or talking about, there is, again, it's like South Korea is all things zombie right now. That's the popular thing. And they were reviewing this show that's basically about a zombie detective, which it's kind of an interesting premise. I don't know if we'll be able to see that here. I'm sure it will be available at some point, since clearly our friends at Forbes were able to review it. But that's kind of, I don't know, it's a little iZombie, don't you think?
Well, that's my first take, and that's why I saw this headline and just cruised right on by. I was like, I need another version of iZombie. Like, I need a hole in my head.
So I know you're not a fan. I liked it a little bit more than you, but still, it went off the rails a bit. But anyway, maybe if we're bored someday, we have more than enough fodder to review in the coming weeks, without question. Then
is this going to stream in the U.S.?
It sounds like yes, it is, especially given the popularity of #Alive. So I think we'll probably see this on one of the streaming channels pretty soon. The next up is Walking Dead World Beyond. They did a review. They saw a sneak preview.
CNET did a review,
Yep.
and I take umbrage with reviews like this of zombie shows by people who are not fans of the genre to begin with. You
Agreed.
and I, we've had this conversation before where they're like, there's nothing new about this, nothing fresh. I'm just like, get out.
Right. I just feel like, having somebody who's not a fan review this kind of thing is kind of silly. But anyway, I didn't get too far into it. Again, didn't want to spoil it for myself, but it sounds like they gave it kind of mixed reviews, just said it was retreading the same ground. But all of us know that there's probably some nice Easter eggs in there for us, given that, this particular universe, it's a different take on that, and it's fast forwarded a few years forward. So I'm still going to watch it, and that premieres October 1st, I think.
I honestly don't really understand the concept of publishing a review before the episode is even available.
Well,
to the
I don't
public.
know.
Like,
I think
what are you trying? You're trying to turn people off of watching the show before
I guess,
it's even out.
But I mean, look, we all know that's not going to dissuade people like us from watching the show.
No,
So it seems sort
we're
of
gonna
like
make
pointless.
up our own damn minds. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just thought I knew it would rile you up, which is part of why I included it in here.
Okay.
In other news and real news, my terror of this particular thing, but the brain-eating amoeba in the water supply, or in some water, like freshwater ponds and things like that, has apparently been found in the Texas water supply of several cities. So they had to actually shut down the water and gave warnings that people had to either boil the water or just could only use it they were like, using the toilet is okay. Which I thought was hilarious. But basically, our friendly little brain-eating amoeba, what happens, because it is a part of sort of the water supply in general in Texas and some of the warmer states, is that if you don't treat the water properly, like with chlorine or whatever it is, before it goes into the water supply, it can end up in your house, meaning in your shower and things like that. And while I would say the danger of having this end up eating your brain is somewhat slim, because they've said that before. I mean, apparently this has been an issue for a while, so I think we'd see a lot more cases if that was a problem. But I can imagine
you see one every few months.
Yeah.
It's usually like I went swimming in a quarry or something.
Right. Like
or
you
a
have to
pond.
really like get it up your nose or whatever. So it's like, unless you're like really doing crazy stuff in the shower, I think maybe
Or the bath.
yeah. I guess that's probably more danger to children. But in any case, they had
Grown-ups
this.
take baths too.
Okay. Yeah, but kids are more likely to like dunk their head on the water unless you're taking like a really intense bath, right?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not gonna bath shame anybody.
I'm not bath shaming. I'm just saying, like, it's hard because baths are small for big humans. Anyway, do we really? I don't know. Stuart, are you telling me that you take a bubble bath all the time? Is that what you're telling me?
I would if I could.
Me too. Our bath is not big enough for this. So maybe this is where I'm coming from. If I had one of those big soaking baths, maybe I would do that all the time.
In Texas, bathrooms are just bigger down there.
That's true. But in any case, just sort of tagging on to this story, Chandler Riggs apparently did a silly PSA about it because, he lives in Texas. So I just thought that was kind of funny. Anyway, stay away from the brain-eating amoeba, people. If I ever needed more reason why not to live in Texas, this might be it. Just in general, the southern states, this idea of the brain-eating amoeba freaks me out a lot.
It's freaky as much as there's levity about it. Honestly, any compromise to the water system is a huge problem for any part, like any community.
Well, I think
because you take it for granted that you turn the tap on, what you're getting is good, clean, safe drinking water, and
right.
that's, if it's not the case, that's a huge wake up.
Well, and I think the thing that freaked me out the most about this particular story is that it was like many communities. It wasn't just like the water supply of one town, which would be scary enough, but this was like several communities. It's enough, like a pretty big expanse of Texas, because I guess they all get the water from the same.
It's like they're all in one water district. Perhaps.
Yeah, but I mean, anyway, stay safe, Texans. We're thinking about you out there, and I'm glad Chandler Riggs was getting on board with the warnings, but and I think the scariest thing about this thing is that the symptoms of brain-eating amoeba look very flu-like, and so even and then even when they do catch it early, there's very rarely anybody that gets cured from it, so it's a little terrifying. So anyway, on with more terrifying stuff that's fiction, not real life, because I just can't bear this story anymore. We're going to be talking about Lovecraft Country, episodes 5 and 6, Strange Case, and the Meet Me in Daegu, and these are, the first was written by Cheryl Dunier and directed by Misha Green, Jonathan Kidd. Other way around. Sorry, directed by Cheryl Dunier and written by Misha Green, Jonathan Kidd, Sonia Winton, Odomatin. And basically... I know. Sorry for that pronunciation.
These are two amazing episodes. Can we just start with a disclaimer or whatever the opposite of a disclaimer is?
They're two amazing episodes with very tied-in themes, I'd say. This is the Ruby-based episode, and I would say there's another Tick-based episode. But this particular one is a Ruby-based episode with a little bit, I would say, there's definitely a little bit of Montrose and a parallel with Montrose in here, definitely.
There's 100% some Montrose going on. Yeah. Oh, and Tick and Letty do also have appearances in this episode, but it certainly is more of a Ruby story.
Right.
And William and Christina Braithwaite.
Yep.
Or William, whatever his last name is supposed to be, and Christina Braithwaite are also big players in this episode. Ruby, it starts with Ruby. I believe it ends with Tick, actually. But it starts with Ruby waking up not as Ruby,
right.
But as the racist dog-wielding pseudo-sheriff from that weird Amish town that they encountered when they were in Artem. So that's weird. Like, you're just like, I recognize that woman. Why? Okay. I'm curious why they're using that woman again, that actor, or I'm sure there's a story reason.
There's
suggesting maybe she wasn't her back then.
Yeah, they've no. Well, so they've morphed a couple of characters. There was another character that they apparently have written out, and instead have put this person in place, which is fine. Sort of. Although it's interesting the choice that they made, because basically in the book, Ruby is supposed to wake up as this incredibly model-like redhead. Who also is featured in the first story, but they wrote her out of this whole thing. So I think they combined characters, but they needed it to be somebody you recognized. So we'll see if it goes the way I think it will go later on. But
that explains a little bit, because I think they probably didn't change all of the writing about how Hilary Davenport, is that her name, or Haversham or something?
Davenport.
How people react to her.
Yeah.
And to me, that always struck me as ringing a little false.
Well, that's
people
why
would react to this woman that way, because she's nice looking, but she's nice. That's about it.
Yeah, and she's not. There's nothing extraordinary about her, and and I was sort of. I agreed with you, and I understood it a little bit more, I think, or had more context because I understood that story. But basically, the reason why people react to her that way is that she is extraordinary looking, like just looks like an angel kind of, but also dangerous. Right. Like she's she's something like, apparently she's like a lot taller than Ruby. And a lot like slimmer, and so there's all this stuff about like when she shapeshifts out, and they do it a little bit with this, but the clothes don't fit, and like there's all sorts of weird things happening. Because
when Ruby shapeshifts out of Hilary,
right?
First of all of those are amazing.
The effects. Yeah. I mean, it brought back a little like American Werewolf in London, mm-hmm. like number one, don't want to be a shapeshifter kind of thing. It's really violent and disgusting. And the bone cracking is amazing. Like the effect is really good here. But the big thing is that walking around as a white woman, she's experiencing white privilege in a way.
She gets free ice cream, though.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, again, I don't know that adds up. I think it's obviously a little bit of a fantasy here, because that definitely doesn't happen.
That's like some Pleasantville stuff or something.
And I think that's deliberate here. I mean, I think it's supposed to be playing along those lines. Like, there's definitely a little bit of that fantasy going on. And, I do think they're clearly trying to hit home the difference that Ruby feels when she's in her own skin versus in this person's skin, and that's where they're going here. But even, immediately, like, Ruby's all confused, as you would be waking up in a body that's not your own. You must think you're going crazy. And she's like out in the street in a bathrobe and gets treated with respect by the police to some extent. And she also has to basically protect this boy that ran into her. Like, she gets like they really push this theme, and it's,
I like that they launched really early in the episode with her coming into contact in a black neighborhood with black people, and
right.
And she's too busy freaking out in her own head to react fast enough, and she's just getting herself into trouble.
Right.
And what I was curious about, though, was what their explanation was for how she gets from the mansion to that neighborhood. They don't really explain it.
No, they don't. And I mean, I guess, she just probably gets there because that's what she knows. But yeah, agreed. I think that's kind of weird. And then the police bring her back and, treat her as if she's, with kid gloves, and she's going to a very wealthy house because obviously William is there and had called it in. And then we see the metamorphosis, which is just absolutely disgusting.
Well, this first one is extremely violent, and William cuts Ruby out of Hillary's skin.
So, it's definitely a very visceral and visual effect. I was really impressed with it, though. And even the ripples, like, her bones crack. We see, like, the skin ripple in a totally like that way that you like, it's almost like something's under her skin, which it is. It's Ruby kind of coming out of this. And, she is, William basically says, going out and enjoy and have this freedom. And she's kind of seems like she's iffy about it, but then clearly takes him up on it and just
goes back for more and more and more.
Right.
Yeah, she totally gets into this. Well, yeah.
Yeah, so
why not? Like, she's like tired of being interrupted, right? So this is one way that she can, she can live in a way that does not feel like shit. So I get it, but I don't. It's kind of interesting and funny in a way that she is drawn back to Marshall Fields, and I think she uses her own resume.
She does, and then that's what infuriates her even more when she finds out that the one black woman that's been hired has absolutely no experience, and she's angry about it. And then there's this weird thing because she also wants to help her, sort of, but not really. She's kind of like mad about it.
She's pretty mad.
And, and she has these weird interactions with all the white people she works with, and the boss is like hitting on her and doing weird stuff with her, and that he apparently is not doing with the other women, which is interesting. And then, she's really kind of, there's definitely this, is this what the world she actually wants to be in? And, she definitely takes some power from it, so she's just kind of, figuring things out in terms of what she wants to do or doesn't want to do. And, she gets more and more, I would say, enthralled with William, and he's very seductive in terms of how he presents things to her. But basically, of course, there's going to be a cost for this and a favor.
And he puts that fairly up front. Like, the first time she wakes up.
Yep.
After the first time she's been Hillary, he's like, you can have as much of this potion as you want. Here's a giant stack of money, and you can do whatever you want. I'm not going to even really be around that much because I've got things to do, and he's always gone.
Right.
So he leaves her to do her own thing, but he's like, however, I will ask you for a favor.
Yep.
And it's going to be for a lady friend, which is not really true. I mean, maybe that's true. Because, yeah, the reveal at the end of this episode is just fantastic.
Yep.
But that's like, yeah, so she knows she's in what's great about this too is Ruby is completely aware. That first moment when she's in the bathtub, which maybe after the second time she's been Hillary, she's like, look, I know that I am nowhere near special enough to deserve this, so why don't you just tell me what it is you want from me?
Yep.
So she's completely aware that there's going to be another shoe that will drop, and he is like, well, look, I'm going to ask you for a favor. And until that happens, you're free to... I thought the wording of how he said that was pretty ominous, because he's like, until then, you're free to do whatever you want. Like, meaning that after the favor, maybe things are going to change pretty precipitously also.
Yep.
And we don't really know, because the episode the episode ends fairly soon after the favor is accomplished, I feel like.
Yep, and the big reveal. But, in terms of this whole theme of being in somebody else's skin, it's like, is this actually what she wants to be? Because she definitely, like, they go at one point when she's in Hillary's skin, and they go to a bar in the South Side with some of the other women. They force the poor black woman who works with them to take them there.
Tamara.
And, you definitely get this sense that she's kind of disgusted by just even being there. She's not really enjoying herself because this is like a different existence that she's like missing being there. You can see her looking at the musicians, and, she has to get out of the Hillary skin at that point. So there's definitely some self-loathing there, or just a confusion and a conflict there. And then, parallel to this story going on is the stuff with Montrose, and he basically killed Yaima, and Tick knows it, and Tick basically just gets violent with him because he knows he's done it to get rid of the pages and things like that. Letty does not know this until Tick reveals to her later, and he almost kills Montrose with his fists, or if he, he gets pulled off of him. But then we have Montrose, living out some of the issues that he's having, which is he's closeted. I will say that this is like a super violent sex scene that he has.
These 2 episodes are full of sex.
Yeah, they're full of sex, but this one in particular is pretty violent. And, he's been living this undercover existence, very similar to like what Ruby is going through. He's like figuring out identity. He has conflicts with who he is and who he wants to be. And, I thought it was very interesting that he's then sort of sitting in a room with a bunch of drag queens, you just sort of silent, and I would even say cocooned, because that seems like they're all talking about Metamorphosis in this episode on many levels, and Metamorphosis is painful. And it's this is what Ruby does when she comes out of the skin of Hillary, and Montrose, he's both freed but also in pain when he comes out of his shell, basically. And there's this whole thing that they talk about where he won't kiss his lover in public, or
his lover is Jimmy, the guy from the bar.
Yep.
Who Woody had even insinuated to Tick when he got home.
Yeah. That
they had been spending a lot of time together, Montrose and Jimmy. I think it's Jimmy.
Yeah.
And so this was basically hinted at in the very first episode. Woody is another character on this show, and he's not even in this episode, but he's been in like 2 or 3 episodes now, where he says something to Tick at the beginning of the season, where he's like, "Hey, do you remember me? And my name's, I think it's Woody, or something to do with trees, because he's very tall."
Yeah, because they call him Tree. Yep.
And Tick doesn't like him very much, or you get that impression. Yep. And then he like gets in the car when they drive to Boston, because he's got a girlfriend in Philadelphia that he's trying to visit. I never understood why they had to put him in the car to go to Philadelphia, other than maybe just to remind you that he's a character on the show because he's going to come back later. I assume that's what it is.
Yep.
But just kind of interesting that there's this minor character running around being kind of influential or showing up at times, and you're not really sure yet what his purpose is.
Well, I'm sure he'll come back around, because I mean that I thought that.
No.
I thought the same thing though. It's like, why do you need to put him in this car? And then you don't do anything with him.
Yeah.
But you've got the same sort of like, and I mean, my gosh, I mean, I would imagine at this point in time, being gay and being black and gay is just even a more marginalized section of the population, and I think that they play this pretty well. And there's definitely a freedom that Montrose has once he actually does go out to the dance floor and he's actually kissing Jimmy. But there is definitely there's pain in it, and then similarly Ruby is dealing with all this stuff, just conflicts in her head, and then William and Christina basically kind of push her, but Christina specifically pushes her to be free in what she wants to do. And Ruby is pretty angry, and this whole scene between her and the general manager guy is really messed up.
Oh, talk about violent sex scenes. Yeah, so I don't know if we need to go into great detail about it, but she takes out some revenge upon him, and can't help but feel no
right, because he tries
for him.
I mean, he tried to rape Tamara. So,
but what was odd about that scene also is that Ruby has just metamorphosized. She's covered in skin flaps and blood, and she's just kind of hiding and doesn't do anything, doesn't try to intervene, and you wonder, is she the good guy here in this scenario?
I mean, I think
she's definitely seeming very self-motivated.
Well, right, but I also think that the implication is that Tamara got the job because he did this to her, maybe, and was taking these favors out with her, and basically that's how she got the job, and that's
I don't know, because he's also like, I want to smell you down there, and I've heard rumors.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know.
It's interesting.
Definitely, it's very strange.
But Ruby is like definitely pissed without question. And with this is reason.
Also the favor she has to do is she has to be Ruby to do it. And they give her a waitress uniform, and she has to go and serve deviled eggs at a lodge cocktail party for Captain Lancaster, the guy who we've seen before with Letty in the back of the van. And that's also what's interesting about this episode is Ruby hasn't been involved in any of this, and so she's never met William or Christina or Captain Lancaster. But we know all these other people because of their roles in other episodes. So she plants the rock, which is her whole job, is to plant a rock. And then ends up in a closet with a torture victim.
Yep.
Super nasty. And we also see that Captain Lancaster has some sort of skin graft or maybe a torso graft. It's
almost
not clear.
Looks like a torso graft. And remember, he was friends with Hiram or whatever his name was.
And it appears that he has the torso of a black man, I would say.
Right. And also Christina, has basically encouraged Ruby to do this because apparently this captain had, there's this whole story about how he injured William, threw him in the river, left him for dead, and this was going to help William. So clearly Ruby has some feeling about William on this level.
That's her sales pitch, is if you feel anything for William, you'll do this for him.
Right.
Yeah.
And then William had revealed to her before that he got the potion, or he basically got the knowledge of the magic for the metamorphosis transformation from Hiram. So this was but this is the first, look, Ruby's reaction, she's really upset to see the dude in the closet, but like, this is, dark, pretty dark stuff. So when she comes back, and, just does her thing and gets her revenge, it doesn't stop her from using magic. And she does one last, at least in this episode, one last transformation and basically takes her revenge out on Paul. It's pretty rough. Mr. Hughes. She rapes him with a stiletto, which is fitting. And it's really just brutal. You see her whole metamorphosis. It's really gross and bloody and really crazy. And then she basically goes back to the house, and she's still all like, just wrapped up. I really have to wonder how she gets back to the house looking like that.
When she exits the last scene, and she just appears to walk into Marshall Fields, like, on the floor.
Right.
But how does she get home? Yeah, very curious.
Yeah. And
we've also had more love scenes between Tick, well, one at least, between Tick and Letty. They are at first he's his rage is so terrifying that she is very scared of him, and then he apologizes and basically does a lot of work this episode to try and win her trust back. Big sex scene between them, and then a lot of discussion about, are these pages evil? She has taken photos of them, and he's trying to decode them with whatever tools he has at hand, which are not a lot. But by the end of the episode, he seems to have a breakthrough and has figured out at least one sentence that drives him to phone Gia in South Korea.
There's been some implication before, like he's called her, not talked before. There's definitely something, and we know what he saw, or at least sort of what he saw. There's stuff that happened in South Korea that we don't know about, and that's pretty clear. And he's kind of spent this we get to see while he's been translating the stuff, and he lets Letty into a couple of things. One is that he tells her that Montrose killed Yahima, and the other is that he did have this relationship, and that's a little bit of why he screwed up. And he says things were weird. He doesn't exactly tell details, and we find out in the next episode what was so weird.
It really gets you excited to watch the next episode.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
It's good writing there.
So there's that. But it's,
and also the big reveal here is when finally Ruby's been curious about this locked door in the mansion, the only door that's locked to the basement, and William comes home and she's like, "What's going on with this door and you and Christina?" And I'm whatever. And then William's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, cool." And then he starts to change, and it's not like a huge surprise, I guess, when Christina comes out, but it's still just like a cool reveal.
Well, and I will say I loved this twist because in the original story, this is the Caleb, like Christina is not even a character, like it's all Caleb. And there is, so this was like a pretty cool reveal, not totally shocking given, I feel like Christina's hinting at this and it isn't too far of a leap, but it was a pretty cool reveal. And I definitely thought this was a pretty good like twist. And again, those metamorphosis scenes are just amazing. Where they just like transform. And look, it's gonna like you just wrap your head around you just wrap your head around like all these like different themes, and you have to really think about the different themes of identity and freedom and honesty about who you are, and all the different one of the things that Ruby says is that like the white women that she's working with just want to be black women and vice versa, and they all hate each other. And so there's not like there's just this really they kind of explore this all throughout the theme of this particular episode. And
also the theme of Christina telling her that what we're offering you isn't just whiteness, it's the power to do whatever the hell you want to do because magic gives you that. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see if Ruby continues down that road.
Well, right. And I also, Christina is saying that she, we've seen that she had been limited because she was a woman, which is probably why she does the stuff she does as William. And so that is an interesting twist too, that, that she has a level of power, but it isn't as much power as she has as a white man. And so there is that theme that I think will come back as well. So I think we're ready to talk about the next episode, which is
Indeed. Meet me in Daegu.
Yep, which is all about primarily Gia, who we just heard about from Tick. And it's basically about her life in South Korea. It really nicely plays out this storyline, and she lives with her mother. They seem to be in somewhat poverty. She loves Judy Garland films, like as an escape, goes and watches those. But her and her mother are kind of socially outcast. So she's going to nursing school to try to raise their fortunes. Weirdly, her mother keeps telling her that the only way that they'll get back into status is that if Gia brings men home, which is a weird thing, and I wasn't quite certain what that meant at first.
I thought it was like, you need to get married, girl. You need to marry up.
But she kept saying men, so I'm like, what does it mean? Does she get paid? Like, does she do something? Is she somehow getting information from them? I was like, it can't just be that. And then it turns out that it's actually like something really insane, which, I did not. So I knew that she is we see her doing this speed dating thing, and she brings home one guy who apparently
not from that even. Like the speed dating, I think, was just to really show us that she has no idea how to talk to people.
Right.
That she tries a few different things. One of them she even seems to have a connection with, but then he still marks her as a ex, which is just really harsh. The other two, one she does like a quote from a Judy Garland movie, and the guy's like, "American propaganda, you're evil."
Yep.
And I forget what the first thing she said to the other guy was, but he just didn't even say anything.
And she's mimicking things that she heard this other woman say, who she likes and admires, and so she just doesn't sound authentic, and they get that. But she just can't win.
This actress though is fudge. What's her name?
The one who plays.
I had it.
The one who plays.
The one who plays Gia. She's an American actress. Her name is Jamie Chung. And she comes to me in my consciousness from The Gifted, which was like a 2-season X-Men adjacent show about Inhumans.
Oh.
And she played Clarice Fong, or Blink. She could make like teleportation gates with her fingers.
That's cool.
Yeah, she was like an elfin sort of looking character. She was super, super cool. And I enjoy seeing her in this different role, but definitely kind of love her. So I don't know if you'd ever seen her in anything else.
I
She's
had not, but I know that the woman who plays her best friend, she looks very familiar to me, so I have to see who she actually is. But you know, we're kind of following. She has just these like, I think she's a fantastic actor, so I would love to see her in other stuff too. So I'm gonna probably have to look at The Gifted and all that. But
that was a good show that was a good show. I think it's canceled, but it was fun to watch.
Yeah. But basically she manages.
She brings home this other guy. She goes to a bar and brings home this dude, and she seems to be moving pretty fast. And I think we all know that something's up when she lights the candles, right? I mean, you're like, okay, you have a weird love room in your house with your mom, and you can light all these candles at one time. Mm-hmm. Something ain't right. Something's about to go wrong. I wrote in my notes, I think this guy's gonna die. And then, yep, hairy tentacles from every hole is what I read.
Yeah. Well, I was like, I think it was pretty clear he was gonna die, and he dies pretty horribly. I mean, this is like just so violating and weird. And her mother names what she is later, which is Kumiho, which there's also, which is a fox, a 9-tailed fox spirit. And there is definitely a like similar in Japanese folklore. There's also a fox spirit, and has a similar set of characteristics, which is, typically they are supposed to take revenge on men for things that have happened to women. There's like a few different things. The interesting thing, they've twisted this particular legend a little bit. So we eventually find out from her mother that she's supposed to take 1,000 souls, and then 100 souls. Are you sure? 100? Are you sure?
Yeah.
I thought it was 100. Once she does that, she becomes human again, and the host she's using, or the body she's using, is this woman's daughter. And she had called on the shaman to bring the Kumiho into existence because her husband had been raping her daughter, who was not his daughter, it was his stepdaughter.
It's a whole messed up story.
Right.
Honestly. And I was pretty engaged just in that part of the story before Atticus even shows up later in the episode. So it's pretty cool.
Right. So, and there's all this discussion about whether, because when she does kill these men, she takes all of their memories, and so she has all of their memories, and can spout that stuff back out, but apparently cannot feel love, according to her mother and herself. Like, that's why she's so bad at sort of imitating human things. Although she definitely does have some feeling for her friend that ends up being accused of being a communist spy, which is kind of how she meets Tick.
Super messed up scene.
Yeah.
Where they are effectively shooting innocent people to get this is just a straight up villain scene. Like, I've seen this in Star Wars movies, or not movies, but video games, Fallen Order. It's like, all right, one of you is a rebel spy. We're just going to start shooting everybody in this line until somebody confesses. And it's troubling to see that as something that the American military was doing in the Korean War. I am conflicted by that. I mean, not like it surely has never happened, because war crimes happen. But man.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. Yunja is her friend, and she's a communist, and they, I also think there's something else going on. She might be gay, because she's also
there's some touching. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think Yunja thinks that Gia is actually gay as well, because they kind of like have these weird interactions, but Gia's more like,
I
no,
wasn't
man.
sure because their conversations are like, it's okay to be different, but I couldn't tell if her friend wasn't like, no, I'm different, like I'm a communist.
Could have been that, could have been something
Maybe.
else.
There was
but,
a few different
but,
things. Either way, they were not talking
way,
about the same stuff.
They were not, and Gia definitely, I don't think her friend thought that, hey, you're different because you're a nine-tailed fox spirit. So there's that going on. But there's a lot of talk of monsters, and there's a lot of talk of what horrible acts, what they do to your soul, what they do to you as a person. And Gia saw Tick kill this woman right next to her, and saw him take her friend away.
Yeah.
Obviously, she was going to get killed. And probably
and he did these things without any hesitation.
Right.
Too,
there was there was no pause. And then later on, he ends up in her hospital injured, and she's like, okay, I had told my mom that I wasn't going to take another soul because I wanted to stay in this body. Like, she basically had rejected what she was supposed to do, much to her mother's chagrin. But when she sees Tick, she becomes convinced that he should be the last soul that she's going to take. But, given where he is, he's been injured. He's clearly going through some mental trauma. We see the Tick that we have gotten to know basically throughout this series, but we're seeing, a kind of a different version of him.
A little more naive, a little more innocent.
Yep. But he's definitely a person that's vulnerable and in pain, and he's winning her over. Like, he does all these like super nice things for her. He doesn't recognize her.
The super nice thing that he's doing, like the movie date night was set up in a way that was supposed to be frightening, I think. Like it was juvenile, and I think that that's also probably good writing, that they're making him not super like thoughtful.
Yeah.
Like marching her into the base, having to pretend that she's a hooker.
Yep.
And having his friend Sung kind of be really gruff with her.
Yeah, that's
This is all
scary.
setting her up to think, oh, what's going to happen? I'm going to be killed or something.
Yeah.
And then it's a beautiful date night. And it's like, what? This is not how you set up a beautiful date night.
No. And he could have. Yeah, it was just not. It wasn't good. But I also feel like his friend was like being judgy too, so maybe that was part of it as well.
Then he's the projectionist, like he's totally in on it and helping out, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And they also have
cool
discussions.
Idea, guys.
But they also have discussions about why Tick and his friend are there, how they're treated in America as people of color, and she doesn't understand it at all. She's just sort of like, well, and then his friend is American, but of Korean descent, and so basically is like, yeah, but here I'm also called something, like he's also treated poorly, so there's nowhere for him to be. And then Tick basically says the same thing, and so in any case, it ends up that she takes him back to her house to kill him, and he turns out to be a virgin, which I think somehow makes her pause, because she doesn't know what to do. She's very conflicted because he did all this crazy nice stuff for her, and I do think she's feeling something, but ultimately she cannot bring herself to sleep with him because she feels the nine tails coming out.
Maybe it's that, or maybe she just doesn't want to even put him in harm's way, so she tells him to get out, and then Uma is there and looking very disapproving in the doorway, and there's nothing to make Atticus run faster from their house than the sight of the grandma or whatever, mom, staring at him disapprovingly. But really, her disapproval is all for Gia. It's a weird start to their relationship.
Yep.
And then the next scene, I think, is one of the best ones in the whole episode, where she goes back to the base the next day.
Yeah.
And he's mad at her because of how it went down, and then she tells him, like, I was going to kill you because you killed my friend. Mm-hmm. And this is actually where for Jamie Chung's American accent comes out, because she's like so emotional. But I was fine with that. I was like, you know what, that's cool, and maybe it's the Kumiho picking up on accents, and you can explain it away. But she is like bawling and telling him that she was going to kill him, and that they're both monsters, and that that doesn't mean that they can't be nice people, because they can try to be as good as they see the other person, or something along those lines. They're both crying, they're hugging. I was not crying, for the record, but I was emotionally there for them. And
then they have sex in the movie room, which is weird, but
yeah, they're like, hey, let's just go back on the base and have that sex.
Yep. And they kind
of that sex goes okay.
Yep. And then, she basically tells her mother she's in love with him and that she's able to control like her spirit. Her mother's like, no, the only reason why he loves you is because he doesn't know that you're a monster. And so there's this like, we see like time progress because he's gonna be potentially rotated off the base and
she's trying to read him a book about kumihos.
I know. She's like trying to tell him, hey, these foxtailed things, they aren't so bad.
Check out this book about these spirits, and I'm going to tell you about it. He's like, listen, I might be going back to the States. He's like, he's not listening.
Yeah.
And he's trying to get her to come with. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no, like, you don't know. There's a lot you don't know about me. And then I think that I don't know if that was when they have sex and suddenly she is not able to control the tentacles.
Well, it's not
she's
clear.
She's like fighting her own tentacle tails.
Yeah, she's fighting herself to try to not kill him, but then during the encounter, she sees all this crazy stuff about him. She also sees that he tortured and killed her friend, which is rough.
Mm-hmm. Or was at least part of the torturing. He was pulling teeth out of her face.
And then sees stuff which we know is probably from like what's happening to him now because of the Brothers of Adam, and basically sees that he dies.
A bunch of stuff that we haven't seen.
Right. And he manages to detach himself from her and is freaked out, as one would be if they've been, sucked with foxtails, I guess. And
she throws him. Like, it's not like he saves himself. She clearly restrains her kumiho stuff, throws him across the room, and like, once again, he's running out. Running out of the house.
Yeah.
Like, what's happening?
He doesn't even know what's happened, and it's like, yeah, well, maybe you don't want to know what's happened. This is kind of freaky.
So that's how their relationship ended weirdly.
Yeah.
As he tells Letty, it's like, yeah, dude, you have been to the other, like, the curtain has been parted and you have seen some strange things. So it
like
kind of
when he
why
says
he's kind of okay with a lot of the other stuff that's been going on.
Right. And when he says it ended weirdly, I don't think Letty has any in her imagination could ever think that this is how it ended weirdly. But anyway, so her mother is actually pretty kind to her because she's all like bereft and takes her to see the shaman to find out whether Tick is actually going to die or not. And it's kind of a cool scene. The visuals of the scene are amazing. Mm-hmm. And there's a fox hanging out. The shaman's kind of cool looking. There's lots of like breeze going.
Snow and cherry blossoms, and they're both dressed in like these fancy outfits. Her mom and Gia, and and the shaman has a crazy voice, and she's just like, "You're so silly. You came here with one more soul to take," and does a little bit of a ritual with a burned thing, and then is like, she says, "You're not one with the darkness yet, and you will see countless deaths before your time is done," or something along those lines.
Yep.
No idea what that's supposed to mean. Maybe that means that the 100 souls limit is not a real limit, and she'll be tentacling more men to death.
Yeah.
Maybe, who knows? That was very unclear to me what my takeaway was supposed to be from that.
Yeah, but I think we're gonna see more of her. Probably these worlds will collide at some point, don't you think?
I hope so. I wonder if she's coming to the States. I mean, it seems like the most likely way for this to work out. Rather than in everybody, all the Freemans and the Lettys,
everybody going
and the
to South Korea,
everybody going to Daegu. I think we're gonna have to see Gia come to the U.S. of A, which will be great.
Yeah. So
I do want to just point out, and HA, you and I have talked about this offline. Like, there are no white characters in this show who are good people.
Nope.
That can be challenging.
Yep.
For people of the white persuasion who don't think of themselves as evil, racist motherfuckers.
True.
And I think that's necessary for this story to be told the way they want to tell it. And it is partially, I will say, and not 100%, but it's partially fantasy that, obviously, that all white people are evil and racist. And that they get free ice cream when you go to the store. Like, to me, that just kind of seals that part of the storytelling here.
Right.
And I think that as a Caucasian person who's watching the show and talking about it, that can be hard to watch and hard to like, you know, wrap your head around and your emotional response to it. But it is also about what these writers are, the story they're trying to tell, and the perception that people of color can feel about living in this country.
Well, and also I will flip this on you, which is that, you know, part of, you know, the whole Lovecraft thing, part of why they did this, and this story was written in the way it was, is because, you know, his portrayal of people of color is this, like, negative thing. And I think it's imagining if you're a person of color watching this, or reading this, like the Lovecraft stories and whatever, and how you would probably feel. And I think that that's quite a deliberate storyline they are taking to flip that on its head. So that's not totally shocking to me that it's got this, like this particular theme going on. So, you know, and this was filmed not like, honestly, what was this, filmed in 2019, I think 2018, and they were doing this then, and I think that the significance of this and the impact of it is that much more given what's happening right now in our country. So it's probably something that needs to be out there, and I think that at these two episodes especially, I think did a pretty incredible job. I think they were really well done, and explore those themes really well. And so I think we'll have to see what happens as the rest of the show comes to pass. And I mean, look, you have to have those terribly uncomfortable discussions, right? This is not a comfortable time to live in. And it shouldn't be. And I think especially in the last episode, just even the discussions amongst Gia, who truly doesn't understand what's happening in America. Like, all she sees are like the Judy Garland films and things like that.
Yeah.
And so she's got this very idealized way of looking at it. And even the films themselves, if you look at the ones that they chose Meet Me in St. Louis. And what was the other one? Summerstock. Like, we're talking about just like the very, beyond Technicolor versions of America that would be projected in these other places. So I think that those discussions of culture and fantasy and things like that are happening are important, and how they're just not real. So it's, you know, that's
kind of an important, serious note to end our conversation about these two episodes on. So. Yeah. One final point that I want to make, and not really about that last topic, but about how much I think Jamie Chung might be an amazing individual, is that she got married on Halloween. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that is pretty cool. Okay, so next time we're going to get together, we are going to actually talk about Walking Dead, right? Yep. The finale. Woohoo! Yeah, we're not gonna put together a podcast next weekend. We generally, you know, carve out time on Sundays. We're going to do one midweek, the week after next, I guess. And to talk about the mid-season, not the mid-season. It kind of feels like a mid-season because there's going to be 6 more episodes after this. But the season 10 finale, as it once was. And so we'll be covering that. And then there's so much more happening because that's October. And October, as we know, is now Zombie Central for 2020. If you want to talk to us about these episodes, send us an email at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, or you can leave a note on our website, reanimatedpodcast.com. And I'm curious to hear what people think about these two episodes, so let us know. And until next time, ciao and stay safe, everyone. Thank you, and a goodbye.